My name is Emily, I'm 32 years old, and my fiancé asked for a break so he could move in with my stepsister, the same one he'd cheated on me with before. It was the ultimate betrayal, a calculated move designed to shatter my world. But they fundamentally misunderstood who they were dealing with. Before I tell you the glorious, satisfying details of how they ended up jobless, homeless, and begging for a mercy I no longer possessed, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It's a small comfort to know this community is out there, and we're not alone in these battles. The silence in our living room was a physical thing, so thick and heavy I felt it pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Jason, my fiancé of 1 year, my partner of 4, had just delivered his masterpiece of a speech. His voice, a voice I once found so comforting, was slick with a kind of rehearsed, counterfeit sincerity that made my stomach clench. He wanted a break from us, from our engagement, from the life we were supposed to be building. Not because he didn't love me, he insisted, his eyes wide and earnest. No, this was an act of nobility. He needed to be there for my stepsister, Vanessa. My stepsister. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Since my mother married her father a decade ago, Vanessa had been the shimmering, golden child of our blended family. She was the sun everyone orbited, while I was just a shadow. She could set the world on fire and our parents would praise the beautiful glow. And now, according to Jason, her self-made bonfire was a crisis that required him, my fiancé, to be the fireman. She needs me, Jason said, leaning forward, his hands clasped between his knees as if in prayer. She's in a really dark place. She lost her job, her boyfriend broke up with her, she's completely falling apart. It's my duty, as her future brother-in-law, to step up and help her get back on her feet. It's what family does. He delivered the line "what family does" with a pointed look, a subtle dig at me for maintaining my distance from Vanessa's endless cycle of drama. He didn't seem to register the crushing, bitter irony of his words. Or maybe he just didn't care. 2 years ago, that duty had looked very different. I'd come home early from a work trip, planning to surprise him. The surprise was on me. I found the evidence on his laptop, which he'd carelessly left open. The Facebook messages. The late-night chats that were far too intimate, filled with inside jokes and flirty emojis. And then, the final blow, a digital receipt for a hotel room, booked for 2, on a night he was supposed to be at a work conference. The confrontation was ugly. He'd crumpled, sobbing, swearing it was a one-time thing, a stupid, drunken mistake that meant nothing. He'd been insecure, he'd said. I'd been so focused on my career. Vanessa had just been there. He swore on our future that it would never, ever happen again. And Vanessa? When I confronted her, she didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She just tossed her hair back, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. God, Emily, it wasn't a big deal. Jason was just having some fun. You need to relax. Like a fool, desperate to keep the peace and salvage the life I thought I wanted, I believed him. I chose to forgive. I swallowed the shards of glass his betrayal had left in my heart and agreed to move forward. But I never forgot. You don't forget the feeling of being so thoroughly devalued. From that day on, a wall of polite, frigid ice stood between me and Vanessa. My mother and my stepfather, blinded by their adoration for his daughter, saw it as me being petty and unforgiving. They never saw Vanessa for what she was, a beautifully packaged black hole of need, devouring the light and energy of everyone around her. I'll never forget my 30th birthday dinner. I had just used the last of the inheritance my grandmother had left me, combined with years of savings, to put the down payment on the very house we were sitting in. It was my biggest accomplishment. But the entire dinner was dominated by my mother and stepfather praising Vanessa. She had just quit her 3rd job in a year to find her passion, which apparently involved expensive yoga retreats funded by them. Emily, you're so practical, always focused on your career and your mortgage, my mother had said, patting my hand with a pitying look. I worry you don't leave enough room for spontaneity. Look at Vanessa, she's so in touch with her spirit, so brave. My stepfather beamed. That's my girl. She's not afraid to live life on her own terms. I looked across the table at Vanessa, who was soaking it all in, a small, smug smile playing on her lips. She gave me a tiny wink, a silent acknowledgement of her victory. It was in that moment I realized I wasn't just the less favored child, I was the supporting character in their family drama, the stable, boring one whose purpose was to make Vanessa's chaotic life look exciting and bold. Later that night, my biological sister, Clara, had called. She was the only one who saw through the facade. "Don't let them do that to you," she'd said, her voice fierce. "That house is yours. Your career is yours. You built that. Don't you ever let them make you feel small for being responsible." Her words were a life raft. And now, sitting on the couch I paid for, in the house I owned, Jason was using the same tired script. He was telling me my boundaries were a character flaw, that my refusal to be sucked into Vanessa's vortex of manufactured crises made me cold and unforgiving. The break, he explained with sickening earnestness, would involve him moving into a short-term rental with Vanessa. He would pay for it, of course. Just to provide emotional and financial support until she was stable. It was temporary, he promised, his eyes boring into mine. He swore it would ultimately make our relationship stronger. He was braced for a fight. I could see the tension in his shoulders. He expected tears, screaming, pleading. He wanted a dramatic scene that would allow him to cast himself as the noble, long-suffering hero and me as the hysterical, unreasonable shrew. But as I sat there, looking at the man I had once loved, I didn't feel the hot surge of rage I expected. I didn't feel the gut-wrenching pain of heartbreak. I felt a strange and profound calm. It was a chilling, absolute stillness. The emotional circuit breaker in my soul, worn down from years of small and large betrayals, had finally, irrevocably, flipped. He wasn't my partner anymore. He was just a symptom of a sickness I had allowed to fester in my life for far too long. The sickness of prioritizing everyone else's manufactured needs over my own fundamental right to peace and respect. He finished his monologue, looking at me with a performative sadness, waiting for my cue. I let the silence stretch, letting him squirm in it. Then, I met his gaze, my own voice even and clear, devoid of any emotion at all. "Okay, Jason," I said. "If that's what you feel you need to do, then you should do it." The relief that washed over his face was instantaneous and disgusting. He actually smiled, the arrogant fool. He thought he'd won. He thought I was a doormat who would just lie there and wait for him to wipe his feet on me again. "Thank you, Em," he said, his voice thick with false emotion as he reached for my hand. I pulled it away before his skin could touch mine. "I knew you'd understand. This is the right thing to do. I'll just pack an overnight bag for now. I should probably go tell Vanessa the good news right away. She'll be so relieved." He practically skipped out of the room, a man liberated, eager to deliver the news of his noble sacrifice to the damsel in distress. I listened to the sound of his car starting, the engine noise fading down the street. The front door clicked shut. I was alone. The calm remained, but underneath it, a tremor started. A physical reaction. My hands began to shake. I walked on unsteady legs to the kitchen sink, gripping the cold granite countertop to steady myself. My mind was a block of ice, but my body was processing the shock of the amputation. I had just lost a limb, a gangrenous one, but an amputation nonetheless. I stared at my pale, strained reflection in the dark kitchen window. "You will not break," I whispered to the woman staring back at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of pain and resolve. "Not for him. Not for any of them. This is not an ending. This is an escape." My first call wasn't to Clara, my rock. It wasn't to a friend for a tearful venting session. My first call was to a name I'd found online, a top-rated family law attorney. A woman. "My name is Emily Stanton," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I need to understand my legal position. My fiancé resides in a home that I am the sole owner of. He is not on the deed or the mortgage. He has just informed me he is moving out temporarily. I want to make that departure permanent and legally binding. I need to know the cleanest, quickest, most ironclad way to do this. The lawyer, Ms. Davies, was a godsend. She was sharp, direct, and utterly unsentimental. First, do not engage in any verbal agreements, she instructed. Everything from this point forward must be in writing. He may try to claim tenants' rights, so we need to be proactive. I will draft a formal notice of termination of residency. You will change the locks. You will document everything. She gave me a precise checklist. For the first time in days, I felt a surge of real power. This wasn't going to be a messy, emotional breakup. This was going to be a strategic, tactical extraction. My second call was to the most aggressive real estate agent in the city, a woman whose face was plastered on sold signs everywhere. My name is Emily Stanton, I said. I want to list my house. I'm not interested in waiting for the perfect offer. I'm interested in speed. I'm moving across the country. Then, I opened my laptop. The daydream I'd entertained for months, a life in a new city, far from the toxic swamp of my family, was no longer a fantasy. It was now my escape plan. I didn't just send out resumes. I contacted a high-level executive headhunter I'd connected with on LinkedIn months prior. I'm looking for a senior director role in marketing, preferably on the West Coast, I told him, my voice firm. I'm looking for a significant salary increase and a company with growth potential. I'm ready to move immediately. The next 2 weeks were a blur of clandestine activity, fueled by caffeine and a cold, burning rage. While Jason was off playing house with Vanessa, presumably healing her with his presence and his wallet, I was methodically dismantling the life we had shared. I took discreet video calls for interviews in my car during my lunch hour, my professional smile firmly in place. I met with the real estate agent, signed the listing agreement, and gave her a key. I began the Herculean task of packing. But I wasn't just packing clothes. I was curating my life. I separated everything into 3 categories: keep, donate, and burn. The keep pile was my future. The donate pile was the past I could let go of. The burn pile was for the things too painful to keep but too personal to give away. One evening, sitting on the floor of my home office, surrounded by stacks of boxes, I came across a photo album from our trip to Italy. There we were, smiling in front of the Colosseum, tossing a coin in the Trevi fountain. He'd sworn his undying love to me on that trip. A wave of nausea hit me. For a moment, the ice around my heart cracked. A single, hot tear escaped and traced a path down my cheek. It wasn't for him. It was for the naive woman in that photo, the woman who had so desperately wanted to believe in fairy tales. I allowed myself that one tear. One moment of grief for the future that had been a lie. Then, with a deep, shuddering breath, I stood up, walked the album out to the backyard fire pit, and lit a match. I watched the smiling faces curl and turn to black ash. It was a ritual. A cleansing. I was burning the evidence of my own foolishness. The final piece of the plan was the most delicious. The real estate agent, a shark named Brenda, suggested an open house the following weekend to create a bidding war. It's always best if the current residents aren't home, she'd said with a wink. Don't you worry about that, Brenda, I'd replied, a slow smile spreading across my face. He won't be a problem. Almost 3 weeks after our talk, Jason called. His voice was laced with a new weariness. Hey, Em. Just checking in. This thing with Vanessa it's a lot more than I bargained for. She's high maintenance. I could almost hear him fishing for sympathy. Anyway, I was thinking of swinging by the house this Saturday to pick up my winter coats and my golf clubs. And maybe we could finally sit down and talk? I miss you. Saturday is fine, Jason, I said, my voice a placid lake. Come by whenever. He arrived around 2 p.m. on Saturday, no doubt picturing a quiet house, a lonely, remorseful fiancé, and a path to reconciliation. What he found was a street that looked like a parking lot and a large, professionally printed open house sign hammered into the lawn he used to mow. I wasn't there to witness his reaction firsthand, but my sister Clara, my loyal soldier, had insisted on doing a drive-by reconnaissance mission. She recounted the scene to me later, her voice trembling with suppressed laughter. He parked down the street and walked up the path, his brow furrowed in confusion. As he reached the front door, it swung open and a cheerful young real estate agent, Brenda's assistant, greeted him with a blindingly white smile. "Welcome! So glad you could make it. Here's a brochure with all the property details. The owner has received multiple offers already, so time is of the essence. Feel free to look around." Jason was completely floored. He stared at her, then at the sign, then back at her. What is this? I live here." The agent's smile never faltered, but her eyes went from welcoming to Arctic in a split second. "I'm sorry, sir, but according to the legal deed, the sole owner of this property is Ms. Emily Stanton. And she has authorized us to hold this open house today. If you're not here as a prospective buyer, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside." According to Clara, Jason's face went through a spectacular series of transformations, from confusion to disbelief, to white-hot shock, and finally to a deep, blotchy, furious red. He muttered something under his breath and pushed past the agent, storming into the house. It was his own personal nightmare, playing out in public. Strangers were wandering through his home, opening closets, commenting on the crown molding. His home. Except it wasn't. He stalked from room to room, his panic visibly growing. He saw the empty spaces on the walls where our photos had hung. He saw my half of the master closet was completely bare. He saw the kitchen counters, stripped of all my personal touches. He finally made his way to the garage, the last bastion of his domain. And there, stacked neatly against the wall, was his entire life. His clothes, his books, his video games, his precious golf clubs. Everything, packed into uniform cardboard boxes. Taped securely to the top of the first box was a single, crisp sheet of paper in a plastic sleeve. It wasn't a letter from me. It was a formal, notarized notice from Ms. Davies, my lawyer. It stated, in cold, legal terms, that our engagement was officially terminated and that he had until the 30th of the month to arrange for the retrieval of his personal property, after which it would be considered abandoned and disposed of. Clara, who had pretended to be an interested buyer and followed him in, said he just stood there, frozen, in the middle of the garage, staring at the boxes as a couple with a toddler walked past him, discussing where their minivan would fit. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped it. She heard him hiss into it, his voice a venomous whisper. "Vanessa, you will not believe what that bitch just did. She's selling the house. She's kicking me out." Clara said she could hear Vanessa's tinny, shrieking voice on the other end, even from several feet away. The great romantic rescue was over. The harsh, cold reality had just kicked down the door. And me? I wasn't there to hear it. I was 2,000 miles away, sitting in the corporate apartment my new company had provided, signing the final closing documents for the house sale online. I had accepted an all-cash offer that was 10% over the asking price. The money was already being wired to my account. I took a sip of my champagne, looked out the window at the glittering lights of my new city, and smiled. The first few months were a blur of positive change. My new job was everything I'd hoped for, challenging, rewarding, and with a team that respected my expertise. I was given a major project to lead within the first month, and after a successful launch, my promotion to senior director was fast-tracked. The salary increase was substantial, but the real prize was the feeling of being valued for my mind, not for my compliance. I found a beautiful new house in a quiet suburb, smaller than my old one but with a gorgeous, mature garden and a view of the distant mountains. It was my sanctuary. I started exploring my new city, making friends, and rediscovering hobbies I'd let slide. I was rebuilding my life, piece by piece, on my own terms. About 3 months in, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Ryan, Jason's younger brother. I hesitated, then answered, my curiosity winning out. His voice was heavy with shame. "Emily, it's Ryan. Look, I know I have no right to call you, but I had to. I just wanted to say, on behalf of my entire family, that we are so sorry for what Jason did. He's a disgrace. There's no excuse for it." I was genuinely touched. "Thank you, Ryan. That means more than you know." He let out a bitter laugh. "He's a fool, Emily. A complete fool. He moved in with that woman, and it's been an absolute train wreck. She bled his savings dry in less than 2 months. We're talking designer bags, spa days, redecorating their rental apartment, all while she claimed she was too emotionally fragile to even look for a job. My parents tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't listen. He said we didn't understand their deep connection. He told me the story had gotten out at Jason's work. His betrayal, coupled with his increasingly poor performance and frequent absences to deal with Vanessa's latest crisis, had destroyed his professional reputation. He was on thin ice. He's miserable, Ryan concluded. And he deserves it. I just wanted you to know that none of us condone this. We're on your side. All of us. I appreciate you telling me, Ryan, I said, and I meant it. His call was a form of justice, a validation from an unexpected corner. But the best thing you can do for me now is to let me go. His story isn't my story anymore. I truly wish you and your family the best. I ended the call politely but with an unshakable finality. It was another boundary set, another chain broken. I even received a rambling, guilt-tripping email from my mother, talking about the importance of forgiveness and how family is family. I deleted it without a reply. Some relationships, like a divorce, are about reaching a point of no return for the sake of your own survival. 8 months after I left, Clara came to visit me in my new house. We were sitting on my back patio, sipping wine and watching the sunset paint the sky. "I have something for you," she said, a wicked glint in her eye as she handed me her phone. A little update from the home front. It was a screenshot of a long, rambling post from Jason on a local community Facebook page. It was a masterclass in self-pity. He wrote about how he had been laid off from his job due to corporate restructuring. How his partner had unexpectedly left him, cleaning out their joint bank account, a joint account I knew for a fact was funded entirely by him. He was now effectively homeless, couch surfing with increasingly reluctant friends, and was desperately looking for any kind of work. It was a pathetic, transparent plea for sympathy and handouts. The comments section was a bloodbath. Old colleagues, former friends, even neighbors were merciless. "Isn't this the guy who dumped his incredible fiancée, the one who owned that beautiful house, for her toxic sister?" one woman wrote. Another commented, "Karma is real, Jason. You didn't just burn a bridge, you nuked the entire continent. Hope it was worth it." Clara then showed me a text exchange she'd received from a mutual acquaintance. It was a message from Vanessa. She had already moved on to a new target, a recently divorced dentist. She was complaining that his boat wasn't big enough. She had abandoned Jason the second his savings account ran dry, leaving him with a broken lease and thousands of dollars in debt. They hadn't just failed. They had spectacularly, publicly, and humiliatingly imploded, brought down by the very character flaws they had weaponized against me, his pathetic weakness and her insatiable greed. They were a perfect storm of dysfunction, and they had finally drowned in their own filth. A few weeks ago, I received a certified letter. It was from my parents' lawyer. They were updating their will after a health scare. It was a formal, stilted letter informing me that I was being reinstated as a beneficiary, alongside Clara. It was their clumsy, cowardly way of apologizing, a financial olive branch I had no interest in accepting. I shredded it. My inheritance would be my peace of mind, nothing more. Last week, an email slipped through my spam filter. It was from a new, anonymous-looking address, but the subject line was a dead giveaway. Emily, please, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I stared at the line of text on my screen. I imagined the desperate, manipulative, self-serving words contained within. I thought about the years of casual disrespect, the quiet gaslighting, the final, stunning betrayal. I thought about the pain, the humiliation, and the long, hard road I had traveled to get here. And then, with a single click, I dragged the email to the trash icon. With a second click, I emptied the trash. I didn't feel a surge of anger. I didn't feel a rush of triumphant glee. I just felt quiet. The best revenge wasn't a loud, fiery explosion. It was the profound, unshakable peace that comes after you've calmly, methodically, and permanently taken out the trash. This morning, I woke up early. I walked out onto my balcony, which overlooks my small, perfect garden. The sun was just beginning to crest the mountains, and the air was cool and clean. I held a small watering can in my hand and carefully tended to a pot of basil I was growing. Its green leaves were vibrant and healthy. I was nurturing something. I was growing something. I was building something that was entirely, beautifully, and peacefully my own. I took a deep breath, a breath that filled my lungs without any weight on my chest, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt completely and utterly free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive, but sharing it with all of you feels like the final step in closing that chapter for good. My question for you all is this: have you ever had to make a drastic, life-altering choice to protect your own peace and sanity? What did you learn from that experience? I'd love to read your stories in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more. Remember, you are stronger than you think, and you are not alone.